Hello and welcome back to CODA Restoration Part 3. I've been super excited working on this particular CODA and I've had so much fun in the first two videos that you guys have seen. Now, if you haven't checked those out, I definitely would recommend it. Gives some history on the car and where we are right now, shows you that full process. The car is looking great, but one thing that is not looking great is these very yellow oxidized headlights. They truly look nasty. This car has lived outside since 2012, its entire life. So we're gonna bring these back to as new as possible today, showing you a very DIY friendly headlight restoration kit. Welcome back to another out of spec detailing video here from Clear Detailing in Northern Colorado. Let's jump into it. Well, I am truly thrilled with the results so far on the CODA. This thing is looking spectacular. I cannot believe the paint is looking this good. The headlights have been something that I've been toying with in my mind how I'm going to tackle it. You see, yes, I am a professional detailer, but I typically only work on relatively new cars. This is not something I see roll through the shop every day. I played around with this in my past with older vehicles that I've owned personally, but am not a professional with this. So I thought instead of using a full-on professional strength, going in there, sanding it with the DA and basically painting on a new UV inhibitor on the light, let's try a DIY friendly kit. Now, I actually had a ton of people reach out to me through either comments or DMs or emails saying, hey, you should try this for the CODA. And that particular product is this. This is Cerakote Headlight Restoration Kit with a ceramic coating over it. Now, like I said, a lot of those professional grade ones are likely the better option for long lifespan and durability, so you don't have this buildup on your headlights again. But I wanted to try one of these. It has very good reviews and a lot of people recommended it. And I thought, okay, this would be interesting for a pro level detailer to use an off the shelf product here that you can buy off Amazon. You can get it at your local Walmart or anything like that. So we'll go through everything that's included here. Now, I'm going to be doing two different tests on this particular vehicle. So within here, it has an oxidation removal towel, and then you go and sand it, and then you apply the ceramic coating. I have already done the passenger side headlight, doing that process, but instead of leaving the sanding on and then ceramic coating it, I buffed and polished all of the headlight out. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are freaking out right now because typically what you do with these is sand them down and then apply it on there. I think this is an interesting topic to cover because typically when you're applying something like that, you need the UV inhibitor on there, the ceramic coating in this case, to really soak in there. And typically with sanding marks, it needs something to grab onto. Now, all the information you guys do online say about 1,000 different things on what grit sandpaper to use and all likes of that. Some guys are using 400 grit and 800 grit. This particular kit is 2,000 grit and 3,000 grit. So I'm curious to see, because I haven't tested it yet, applying that ceramic coating to just a sanded area, is it really going to cover up all of those sanding marks? I'm not quite sure. On this headlight on the driver's side, I'm going to do it as the box states using the instructional video, and we're gonna see how it actually looks. And then while this car is living outside for the rest of its life, we'll be able to see what actually works best, because I'm curious myself. Should you apply the ceramic coating UV inhibitor, basically the clear coat, with sanding marks or without, fully buffed and polished? So I'm excited to get into this. Let's get this box opened up here and I'll show you everything that comes inside. Well, I wanted to showcase here our results from the previous one. Now, on the passenger side here, what I did, again, I followed the instructions step by step via the box. But what I did, instead of leaving it sanded, is I did compound and polish the entire headlight. And my, oh my, the results here are astounding. Look how yellow this lens is versus this. I hope the camera really picks this up. These are getting very, very foggy. And as you can see, especially here on the edges and sides, getting very yellow. This is all the UV basically just hammering this day after day after day. And this is very common through all manufacturers of older vehicles. Now, a lot of modern ceramic coatings have a lot of UV inhibitors in them, so characteristics that will help prevent this. Now, With this kit, there are a few things that I don't necessarily think this is going to be a lifetime product. I could be totally wrong. It may stay this nice forever. Now it's important to note, again, I have not applied the actual ceramic coating to this. I figured let's make a full video on this and I'll do this side and then we'll coat them both at the same time. But I'm pretty darn impressed so far with how this kit worked out. Seemed to get a lot of that yellowness, the cloudiness of course out of it, because this just looks truly awesome. Now, if you are wondering, I am shooting these videos out of sequence. I basically started shooting video 4 that's coming up next after this one before I'm actually shooting this video. So if you're wondering why the paint looks so amazing and there's still water dripping under it, stay tuned for part 4. But I think let's jump into this here quickly. So first off, what I'm going to want to do is tape around the headlight. Now they do not say this in the instruction manual. I personally think that is a huge mistake. I think you really need to tape this up because you don't want to destroy the paint around there. These are very heavy chemicals, and we'll be curious to see how this actually lasts. So here's our box over here. This is the Cerakote Ceramic Headlight Restoration Kit. Let's open this up and see what we actually receive in here. So here is your first instruction manual. It has a little QR code on here. You can go in there, watch an entire video. I did the same thing just to see how this entire system works. Now, in here, it comes with 4 oxidation removers for 1 headlight. So it actually came with 8. So I've already used those. Those are gone. So we'll walk you through all the steps. I'll show you step by step exactly how this works. These seem to remove a ton of oxidation, and it was really impressive. Next, it comes with a little hand sander here, and I wouldn't freak out about this. It's really not the end of the world. I will see though, again, talking about applying the ceramic coating afterwards, if it actually hides all of the sanding marks. Now it came with 4 sanding discs, 2 of the P2000s and 2 of the P3000s. I've already used those, tossed it out. It's nice that it comes with separate kits here. So this is, yes, a review of this product for sure. I'm sure there's other ones out there that you're saying, you should use this one. But this is a very simple step-by-step formula that, DIY folks can use if they purchase an older vehicle and their headlights look like this. So before we keep going here, let's get the headlight taped up and then let's start the actual process. So we're all taped up here, and these are the little oxidization removers here. And there's 4 of these, 4 per headlight. So keep that in mind. It's really nice that they're separated here. All you're gonna do is start working this in. And I'll share some results with you once we kind of start moving along here and seeing how this stuff actually works. Now, of course, it would be a heck of a lot easier if you just removed your headlight here to do this, but it's also a little bit trickier to work on a bench or, hold it down properly. So I'm opting here to not break any clips on the CODA. There's no parts for these, so I don't want to break anything on here whatsoever. What you're gonna see is the headlight is already turning clear. What you're also gonna see is this chemically reacting with the oxidization that is on there. Man, I cannot say that word here today. So we're just gonna scrub this in. We're gonna flip this over. And it's important to note, Cerakote says in their instruction manual to use all 4 per headlight. You'll see as I go through this, as I found on the passenger side, that you just keep removing all of this smudgy, nasty mess that's on here, and it really helps clear up the headlight quite a bit. Now, one thing that I did find here on the CODA that was a little bit tricky is this particular area here basically has a back plastic on here, and it does still look a little bit yellow. But you can see there how much of a difference that was. Once it becomes like this, it's time to grab your second one. So off camera here, I've got them all torn open already, ready to go. Boom, here we go. And what you'll see throughout this, we'll probably speed this up when I'm done talking here, but it just gets brighter and brighter and brighter and clearer. But the interesting thing is that oxidization keeps coming off. Look at that, it's so wild. Now you also want to make sure your headlight is clean before you do this. Should have mentioned that before. This car was just washed, so I would definitely recommend using something like a pH neutral car soap or something of similar sorts, whatever you're using to actually wash your car, and this will work quite well. So let's check this. Okay, still pulling off a ton of crud. Now you're just gonna wanna take your time with this. Again, I think the results you're going to receive are going to be better the longer you work with this. Boom, that one's done. Let's grab a fresh one. So as you can see here, done with number 3, it is definitely getting lighter and lighter, but still pulling off a ton of residue from these headlights. And again, this car is, I guess, 13 years old. Going to grab a fresh one here. I guess we'll keep it in the certain squares. And I'm feeling that all of that kind of haze is coming off here. This is getting smoother and smoother as I wipe here. What's interesting too is a lot of companies seem to be using the same process for a DIY friendly kit. I'm not sure if it's made by one company, white labeled for others, but yeah, definitely seems to be very, very similar. So it seems like products like this are selling quite well. And for, you know, someone that just wants to clean up their headlights over the weekend or something like that, I think this is a best use case. Now, again, if I were offering this service in a professional detailing sense, I would probably do something quite different. But again, it's not something I typically work on. I'm working on brand spanking new cars. Cerakote also said in their instruction manual, if by the 4th one it is still yellow, that is okay. You've gotten enough of it off. There is also no particular order that you have to use these. It's not like it changes. It seems to me that it's all the same material working in here. Let's just flip this over here. Also, should be noted, wear gloves with this stuff. It's very, very nasty. You don't want to get this on your hands. You can see what it's doing to the headlight. Imagine what that does to your skin there. The gloves they provided, not the greatest. I'm also very particular as a detailer because I have gloves on all the time. So I think we did pretty good. It's important to know areas like down here, you really need to make sure you're getting in those. But man, that headlight is looking way, way better. So I'm gonna remove my glove here. We're gonna grab some water and rinse this off and get to the sanding phase. Now with this, all you need to do is rinse it down. I have it with a pressure washer attachment. I'm not going to use pressure on here. The pressure washer is turned off, just leaving water able to run through it. And you just want to make sure you thoroughly rinse this area off. Looking quite good there. Now you'll notice down here on this particular light, you probably are not doing this on your CODA, but it holds a ton of water and product down here as well. So you just want to make sure you're flushing everything out of those little nooks and crannies there, and make sure you're rinsing off the paint below. Now we're going to jump into the sanding. So first off, we're going to grab our red pad here. This has Velcro on the back. This is the 2000 grit. And we are going to apply it here to this, which also has Velcro. Boom, simple as that. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of you watching this, if you've done headlight restorations before, saying 2000 grit is way too light to start on the headlights here. I'm not sure what the best answer is, but this is how they tell you to do it. So one thing I do find weird with this is we're just gonna start sanding this. They tell you 2 to 3 minutes. That's very vague. I imagine it is basically how bad your headlights are here. Now, one thing I also think is quite weird with this setup here is that you're not cross sanding it, and they tell you to go in straight lines exactly like I'm doing here, working around the edges, and you can see all this milky nastiness coming off of here. Truly insane how much crud gets built up on those headlights. Now this is an area that you definitely want to take your time with. Make sure you're getting all the edges, and make sure areas like this, you actually remove this and can get it down here. You also want to make sure you're keeping this wet and rinsed off. That's going to help the sandpaper actually get in there and work. Now what I've done here is taken this actually off, and I'm going to come in here again working in one way. The only thing I don't love about this is when you sand like this, you get very different results. Like you'll have a little bit heavier marks in certain areas than others because of the pressure of your fingers. This is definitely not ideal. Now in traditional wet sanding and car detailing, typically what we do is go in like a 45-degree cut area like this. So if we're sanding here with 2000 grit, when we come back to 3000, you're gonna go up and down. The instructions do not say to do that. They say to move in one way and one way only, which I find a little strange to say the least. Also, I want you to notice here, you're taking sandpaper to your headlight. The ease of doing one of these situations, getting it onto your paint, if you don't tape everything off, is very, very easy to do. So again, highly recommend you do this with a little bit of tape anytime you're touching sandpaper to your vehicle. So I'd say we're looking quite good. So the easiest way to figure out if you've sanded enough is to rinse it off. Going to grab a clean, dry micro here. This is brand new. We're going to wipe this off. Can blow some air over it, and what you're looking for here is you want to make sure you've gotten all the areas. Now if you have an air compressor of some sort, it's a little bit easier to be able to blow that on there and see how it's looking. I think we did a reasonable job. Let me grab some air and let's check this out. So again, what we're looking for here is consistency. Looking at this, it looks pretty darn consistent. Even in areas down here, you want to make sure all the water's off there, just so you can check it. This edge is definitely a little tricky here with how the headlight fits, but I think we're reasonably happy with that. So next, what you're going to do is open your little kit here, take the 3000 grit, and repeat again 2 to 3 minutes. Now, my personal opinion as a pro level detailer, again, I would want to go this way. That helps take away those 2000 grit sand marks. They say to do it in the same direction. So that's what we're gonna do here, because we're doing this to what Cerakote says. Again, we applied a little water. We have our gray disc on here, and we're just gonna go in. Now this feels a lot smoother. You can feel a huge difference between 2000 grit and 3000 grit. Same thing applies here, 2 to 3 minutes. I think that's a little weird how they say to do that, but that's just my personal opinion. Now 3000 grit sandpaper is very light, very, very, very light. Pretty easy to actually do. You know, when I'm working on paint here, I'll take, you know, even down to 1500, 1000 grit, quickly hammer a little rid, a random isolated deep scratch, knock that out with 1500 grit, maybe finish out with 2500 to 3000, depending on that area, compound it, and it's pretty easy to take out. Now the interesting thing I think you're going to see here is the headlight is actually going to get clear. So it was nice and foggy before, and it's looking already quite a bit better. Sprayed off my sanding disc over here. Going to do a quick rinse. So as I'm looking at this, I'm seeing quite a bit more sanding marks in this particular area. So I'm just going to come back in with my applicator and try and work those down a little bit. Really basically feels like I'm just rubbing a smooth block over this. Now you can really feel a difference between 2000 and 3000 grit. Should be known there. So I would say that's a reasonable amount of sanding here. Now, last step, we need to rinse this. And then this is a very, very important step. Before you go to step 3, technically this is step 4, if you will, because you sanded twice, but you want to make sure everything is completely and absolutely dry before applying the ceramic coating. Very, very important step here. Now, the interesting thing with the coating, it doesn't sound like you wipe it off. You apply it, leave it. It's supposed to be dry for 60 minutes before getting wet again, so don't do this if it's raining. We're going to dry this up. We're also going to grab our air tools over here. Just helps it. You can always just leave this, let everything dry, and then come back to it for sure. Now, let's take a look at the difference here. So we are ready to coat these. These are completely and absolutely dry. Now, what you'll notice here, I do have a little bit of yellow light coming from in the detail bay. Definitely a little bit more yellow on the Kelvin, but you can see how much clearer this one is. Doesn't have a ton of that yellow tinge. Over here, it still looks a little yellow. So to me, this is a little skeptical on if just sanding it and then applying the actual coating to it is the right way to go. Again, I think the nice thing with this, if it doesn't work out, I am very, very easily and able to come back, tape this up, resand the thing down with the coating that's on there, and then buff it out to a shine like this. But it'll be really interesting to see how these actually last. Are one going to be worse than the other? I'm not exactly sure, but in my personal opinion, this one looks a lot more clear. This one looks a lot more yellow. So let's get to coating here. I'm going to throw on yet another glove here. We're going to use one applicator per headlight. So let me show you that here. This is, of course, step 3, one for passenger, one for drivers, and then we'll end it off. Again, I did re-look through the instruction manual. You apply it, let it sit for 60 minutes outside of the elements, not getting it wet or with any moisture on it, and that's it. You don't wipe it off or anything like that. So I'll take you quickly here through the install instructions and give you my final thoughts after I see how it installs. So here's our ceramic coating applicator here. So here's our ceramic coating applicator. Smells very, very heavily of ammonia. They said it's okay if you get it on the paint, you can wipe it off. My preference would be to tape it up. I just want to do it per their instructions here. So we're going to make a single slow wipe in the same direction we sanded. Coming down here, once we get to the edge, they say to come back and do a 50 overlap here. Let's just flip this over for some extra. Curious to see this because traditionally in ceramic coatings, you would want to level this afterwards. So it's a little odd that they don't have you wipe this off. Again, I'm just going per their directions here. And it says that is that. I gotta say, that looks pretty darn sharp if you ask me. So let's flip over to the other side and see how this goes. Over here to our fully buff side, and man, oh man, this looks quite good. Fresh applicator again. Now we're going to go in a straight motion here, overlapping by 50%. It's definitely harder to see where you've applied here. Just from my professional detailing knowledge and tedious eyes, I know exactly where I've wiped. Again, one thing that does somewhat concern me is the self-leveling ability, and if we're gonna see, you know, coating high spots or things like that, I think that could be very interesting. We'll get this little strip one more time down here. Boom. And that is a done, finished project, or so they say. We'll be curious to see how this actually clears up within the next couple of hours. So I will update you tomorrow morning, but this is looking quite nice. I wanted to take a moment right after application to see how this looks. Now again, keep in mind, we have a little bit more yellow lights over here compared to this area, so that may skew this a little bit. So let's look at the buff side that I did earlier. Man, oh man, crystal clear. That looks really awesome. Again, this area around here, maybe not on camera as I'm looking through the screen here, this doesn't look as yellow on camera as it does in person, but this border for sure looks a little bit yellow tinged. Now over here to the sanded, not buff side, this is looking actually pretty darn nice. Still seeing that same yellow. Yeah, I can definitely see it here. Hopefully you guys can as well. But I'm very actually impressed with how these look. I'm anxious to see, you know, when I come into the shop tomorrow, how these actually look. So we're gonna let these sit overnight, and then I'll give you a final verdict on this, and we'll end off the video. One thing I do still want to make a quick note of, I'm not necessarily sure about this whole, you know, just wipe on solution. I'll be curious to see longevity on this. Again, Kyle is going to leave this car outside. So I don't know, we'll see. Is this gonna be totally gone in a year? This was a very simple process, I gotta say. I mean, maybe realistically takes you about 20 to 30 minutes for both sets. That's a very, very simple process. And I believe it was between 15 and 20 bucks for this entire kit. So overall, I would say value for money. This totally changed the look of the front end of the car. So I'm very, very pleased with that. Again, didn't want to go the full aerosol version and get into spray painting over here, but I'm very anxious to come back in the morning and see how this looks. Back here the next morning, and things are looking quite good. I do apologize for the dirt on the floor. The CODA had just a ton of crud coming out of the front hood area. Interesting results here, I will say. So a couple of things. The coating looks great on here. It's very smooth. It doesn't have any high spots. I think it did its job. So I'm very, very pleased with that. Now there is, what I'm seeing, a massive difference from the passenger side light to the driver's side. I hope it kind of comes through, but this one looks a little bit more cloudy. And if I really come in here, I can still see some of the sanding marks. That was part of my concern and issue with not sanding one side, buffing the other side. And my personal opinion is this one looks way better. Now, longevity wise, I'm not exactly sure. I would still say both headlights look better than they actually did before, but I would say this one looks a little bit better. Now, is this one gonna last a year and this one 3 years or lifetime? I'm not exactly sure. But my findings are this. If you're going to do this as of right now, via my testing, I would say sand, do all the headlights, and then buff and polish it here. I think this looks a heck of a lot better. Let's get you some quicker close-ups here. You can see how crystal clear that looks. And then as I pop over here, definitely slightly more yellow tinge to it and just a little bit foggier, but I would say results are very good. So thanks so much for watching another out of spec detailing video. Hope you found this interesting. I sure did myself. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one soon. Bye-bye.